This area between the baseline and the kitchen is called the transition zone, and it's one of the most important parts of your game to master if you want to level up. Today, I'm going to break down how to use the transition zone to build weapons instead of just surviving and resetting the ball. This is your full transition zone masterclass. Let's get into it. So your ready position and paddle height shifts based on your position on the court. For example, when I'm at the kitchen, I'm going to have a higher ready position anticipating chest high attacks because they're speeding up upwards rather than at my feet. But as I move back towards the baseline, now those speed ups that come at my chest are now going to sail out. Therefore, my ready position is going to be a lot lower when I'm towards the baseline, and then it's going to move up when I'm at the kitchen. And a great example to showcase this is using the slinky drill. And the slinky drill is a great example to showcase this. You'll see my ready position be very high while I'm at the kitchen, and then it'll decrease and be way lower as I'm towards the baseline. So the ideal ready position height when you're in the transition zone is going to be hip level or even slightly low hip level, because anything that comes to your chest is going to be out. So we want our paddle centered out front with our knees facing forward, and we want to be on the balls of our feet in an athletic stance. Because when we're on our heels, then that's going to keep us off balance, and it's much tougher to move side to side as well as forward and back very quickly because you're on your heels rather than the ball of your feet. So being on the ball of your feet really helps you stay balanced and move in all four directions. And a tip to always stay on the ball of your feet is to utilize the split step. No matter whether I'm hitting a return, a third shot at the kitchen, or in transition zone, I'm always going to utilize the split step right before my opponent makes contact with that ball. Because as I split step, I'm going to be ready as well as on the ball of my feet so I can move quicker either direction. Because I can be more well balanced, ready, and explosive to any ball. Compared to if you don't split step, you're going to be caught in this weird, wonky footwork where you're not balanced, not explosive, and not ready for that next ball. And remember, you cannot get lazy. If you're just trying to walk up and you're on your heels, that's going to delay your movement and your explosion in any direction. Moving on, every single one of us has a different grip, so let's talk about which one's going to be the most successful in the transition zone. Starting off with Continental, the most common, that's going to be also known as handshake grip. There's going to be no favorite towards your forehand or backhand side, so therefore you're going to be very well balanced in the midcourt. You can hit really good resets with your forehand or really good resets with your one-handed backhand. You don't need two hands. Now, if you're going to use a more extreme grip, such as Eastern or semi-Western, then you're going to need a second hand on your backhand side to turn your paddle down to avoid those pop-ups. However, the positive of having a more extreme grip is that your forehand is super aggressive, so you can more easily create offense in the midcourt. Personally, I like to go with an Eastern grip from the baseline all the way to the kitchen because it gives me the most aggression while also feeling consistent with my two-handed backhand. Also note, the more extreme my grip goes, the more I have to hinge my wrist backwards when hitting a forehand in order to get under it. Because if my grip is so face down, when I'm in the transition zone, I got to get the ball up. Therefore, I have to turn it backwards a little bit in order to pop it over the net. So this right here is Continental. It's going to be the most well-balanced grip because there's no favorite side of forehand or backhand. You can hit a great backhand and forehand no matter what. This is going to be Eastern. You can see my forehand side is angled a little bit more downwards, therefore it's going to be more easy to be aggressive off of it. My backhand face is going to be a little bit more open. That's why I mentioned you need that second hand in order to close your paddle face at points. And then semi-Western is going to be all the way over here. You can see my forehand is almost facing the floor with my backhand being towards the sky. Two hands is essential for semi-Western. There's not one person in the world who uses semi-Western without a two-handed backhand. So there's two main schools of thought when using the transition zone, and that's going to be the old school and then the new modern day school. So the old school of thought is going to be for 3-5s and below, in my personal opinion. It's going to be what you see all the country club pros teach a lot of their students, and this is going to be reset everything and prioritize the soft game. That means no matter how high you can hit it, try to get the ball to land in the kitchen. This transition zone is purely used for you to hit that transition ball and then move up to the kitchen rather than actually being aggressive off of it. Some players are very good at this, and they use that support role just to make balls. Colin Johns is a great example. So no matter how high that ball is in transition, they're just going to loft it back into the kitchen and move forward. However, once you become a 4-0 plus, then this is when you can start building and developing your own weapons and therefore adopting the modern day school of thought. And that is to be selectively aggressive. Apply pressure and make sure your opponents never feel comfortable even though they're set and established at the kitchen line. Now, the number one rule for the modern day school of thought using the transition zone is going to be if the ball bounces, then reset it If you can take the ball out of the air, then attack it. And Gabe Tardio, Hayden Patriquin, as well as Kwang Dong are some great examples of players who utilize this to the best. By utilizing swinging volleys and backhand flicks coming to the net, then you're going to scare your opponents off the line, and more often than not, you're going to get free rides to the kitchen because they're scared to keep you back, and instead they're just going to concede. These tools will make your opponent second guess and force errors way more often than they typically should because they feel your pressure even though you're not set at the net. And that's what modern day pickleball is all about. Instead of consistency, it's more based on aggression and offense winning games rather than making balls. But trust me, it's way easier to hit swinging volleys because you have much more court to work with compared to when you're trying to hit a soft reset into the kitchen. When you're hitting a soft reset in the kitchen, when a powerful ball is coming at you and potentially jamming you, you only have 5 or 6 feet to work with. When you're hitting a swinging volley, you have the entire court to work with. Therefore, when people argue that you're going to be more inconsistent, it's completely wrong. Now, yes, when you're trying to hit speed ups when the ball is bouncing at your feet, that's not what you should do. If it bounces, then you should still reset it. But if you can take it out of the air, then definitely speed that ball up. Lastly, here's a bonus tip to predict your opponent's next shot, and that's going to be the seesaw effect. The seesaw effect is when my opponent's paddle is going to be high, then my paddle is going to be low. If my paddle's high, then my opponent's paddle is going to be low. If my opponent's paddle is centered here in the middle of his body, then my paddle is going to be centered. So this high, low, high, and then middle to middle is going to be super useful because then you can figure out how aggressive they're going to be with their next shot and how you can predict that with your paddle placement. For example, if my opponent has an overhead and I'm in the midcourt, I know that they're trying to hit it down at the ground towards my feet, so my paddle is going to be as far towards the ground as possible because I know that's where they're aiming. Versus if my opponent has a flick and they're forced to hit up on that ball, I know that my paddle can cheat a little bit more slightly upwards because that's the direction they're aiming. So 5 common mistakes to avoid when using the transition zone. 1, avoid calling this no man's land. It is not, that's the wrong mindset to be in. 2, always resetting is way too passive. If it's out of the air, look to attack. If it bounces, then look to reset. 3, if you're flat-footed on your heels, then you're gonna be reactive rather than being proactive with the split step on the ball of your feet. 4, wrong grip and wrong technique is gonna create a lot of pop-ups. When you're using a more extreme grip, make sure you close your paddle face to be aggressive rather than popping that ball up with one hand. 5, attacking every ball isn't the right choice. That's gonna lead to a lot of unforced errors, and instead focus on only speeding balls up out of the air. So the goal isn't just to use the transition zone to get to the kitchen. It's to create offense and weapons while getting there. Make sure that by being aggressive, your opponents feel your pressure and feel uncomfortable even though they're set at the kitchen line. So that wraps up the Transition Zone Masterclass. I hope you guys took away a few nuggets of information. As always, make sure to subscribe down below for more like this. And as always, I'll see you all next week.